You found product market fit, but now the systems are cracking. The team needs you for everything. Growth feels like quicksand. The more you move, the deeper it pulls you in. This is the scaling paradox, where founders and operators come to get unstuck. I'm Blake Moseni, and I sit down with founders and operators that nearly burnt out and rebuilt their business to operate without them. If you're stuck in the middle, this is where we fix it.
We want to be humble, we want to be hospitable, and we want to be outstanding. First, the humble aspect to me, because it is the most important. You can't operate as a team without a high level of humility. When you think of bad teammates, it's people that aren't humble. And so customers want you to say, I don't know, if you don't know a question. They don't want you to make it up. That's called. We want to be hospitable. When we're in the home, we want to be doing everything that we can to take care of the client. And if we mess something up, we're going to own it, because going back to the humble part, make it right. That's the kind of company that we want to be. And then lastly, outstanding. There's no excuse for us to not sell and install the most premium products that we can in the most excellent way that we can. Those three values are super important to us. They get preached to everybody on a weekly basis. And the really fun part is let's be really intentional about the culture that we're setting. Because, if you've ever been on a bad team, the culture's not fun. But when you're on a good team, it's easy to have a great culture.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Scaling Paradox. Today I'm on with Zach Plunkett, the founder of the Dallas Water Doctor, a high-touch water filtration service that quietly has become the go-to for many Dallas' most discerning and well-known households. After a career in pro baseball and a stint in corporate finance, Zach made the bold leap into buying a business in an industry he knew nothing about. What followed was a crash course in ownership, operations, and a serious side of imposter syndrome. In just 12 months, he's tripled the business, overhauled the overall brand, and went head-to-head with the chaos that he inherited. Today, he is scaling a premium service company with a precision, with grit, and with no compromise mindset on what he wants to lead. Zach, it is so awesome to have you on, man.
It's quite the intro. Thanks, Blake.
Yeah, you gotta love those ChatGPT bios,
Yeah. Funny, the more that AI is around, the more you start to hear it,
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, I'm excited to have you on and to dig into what your experience has been, and really the whole premise of this episode, as we chatted about in the preamble, is what it's like to buy a business and the chaos that the first year founder lives through, trying to, as I said earlier when we were just chatting, learning through trial by fire, right? And so I think the nuggets that you're going to be able to provide to all the listeners on how to navigate some of the landmines that you've stepped on or even been lucky enough to step around is going to be so valuable for them to hear today. But before we get into any of that, I always like to start off on a little bit of a personal note for the listeners to get to know you a little bit better, and ask the question, if you were going to a party with one of your closest friends or a significant other, how would they intro you, and what's a fact that they would share about you?
This is my idiot friend Zach, and yeah, I don't know. He's a glorified plumber or something like that.
Sounds like you got some good friends.
Yeah, I do, man. Our first Halloween after kind of getting into this business we were very tempted to go as Mario and Luigi because
man, that would have been perfect.
We all had mustaches, so there you go.
Is that part of the brand? Is that a brand requirement? Everyone that comes in has
man. The brand requirement, I just had a guy walk by my window and flex. The brand requirement is just that you're a fun dude to be around and that you care a lot about water. So
I love it.
For some reason, another common denominator there is mustaches. But yeah,
I love it. I do have my RO water in this bottle.
There
right
you go.
Here, so maybe I need to start working on my mustache. Join the group. I'm just saying.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Let's go ahead and to dig into things. And I know we're going to touch on some water through this conversation, but it would be good to hear a little bit more about your background. Obviously, the intro gave a little bit of preamble for the listeners, but maybe you could walk us through baseball to boardroom shift that you made.
Yeah.
And what was the trigger for you to leave baseball, jump into finance, and then really make the jump into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, totally. So, like I said, played a little bit of pro ball, was good enough to get in, wasn't good enough to make it. So, spent a few years in the minor leagues, got up to AA, and
Sure.
just a really fun chapter. Got to meet a ton of great guys. I one of my closest friends in pro ball is Australian. I got to go to Bali to officiate his wedding, so just kind of fun little short story there. But yeah, after baseball, I mean, I studied finance in college. I thought that that's what I wanted to do. Spent a couple of years doing that. Was kind of more FP&A. And just I didn't enjoy it. I mean, it was a lot of time in
Hmm.
Excel. It wasn't very personal. There was no creativity really
Mm.
allowed. It just didn't fit what I felt like, some of my giftings were. And so was at a company that was actually not doing too hot. I got let go. My
Mm.
chief responsibility at the time was determining who we should let go. And then they're kind of like,
Mm.
hey, we used your document to let you go. And I was like, oh shoot.
Inception moment, right? Like that
Yeah.
is true. That is a pure Inception moment.
I should have locked that thing or something. But no, I actually got approached by a couple guys that I knew loosely through church, and they had a few small companies, and we had coffee one day, and at the end they're like, "Hey, do you want to run this business that we're acquiring?" And I was like, "Let's do it, man. That sounds like a
Hmm.
blast." And so I think a blast was an accurate depiction in some ways, but it's
Hmm.
certainly been drinking from a fire hose ever since. So it's been a lot of fun though.
I guess like keying into what you just called out on drinking from a fire hose. What did you not expect getting into it? Like I'm assuming you're imagining the Rocky moment. You're going to take over this company. It's going to
Oh yeah.
explode, and obviously you've seen explosive growth. Like
Right.
3x year over year is spectacular. But what
Yeah.
what were the big surprises when you first stepped into the role?
Yeah, I mean, just you always hear people say that like the hardest part about running a business is the people. I think there's nothing special about me and myself, but the guys that I brought on are just awesome, and they care a lot about the company and the brand.
Mm,
And it's really easy to go to war every day with these guys, and small
sure.
business can feel like war sometimes. And you're up against random things that happen, and it's like I remember we brought on a young guy, and he crashed the van like second day on the job. It's
Woo!
we're shooting ourselves in the foot here. So I would just say it's been a consistent like string of just wins, which has been great. But then
Sure.
with those wins, you also have fires to put out. And so
Mm,
I think the thing that I didn't expect the most is probably some more of the you know the the managing people side of things has been a lot to learn. I think my history in baseball and being on teams has allowed me to see a lot of great leadership,
mm.
whether it be coaches or other teammates or what have you. But putting that into practice is much different than learning about it or reading about it. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. You beat me to the punch as you were talking. I'm like, man, there has to be some parallels between what you experienced and learned in baseball and what running a small business is all about.
totally. I mean, we approach it almost like a sport. Like it's competitive, and we want to practice and we want to sharpen ourselves on, whether that be operations or sales or I mean, our literal knowledge of water chemistry and, all the things that go into filtration. But it's a competition. I mean, there's other companies that want the business in the same way that we do, and so it's about, man, how are you going to set yourself apart? What are you going to do differently? How are you going to treat the customer better than anybody else will? And so we really enjoy that, and it's helpful to have a bunch of guys that are like-minded. And most of our crew is former college athletes, so
Very
we
cool.
all have that same thread of kind of a competitive nature, but we keep it fun for sure.
I love that. There's a case study that I read about a manufacturing plant a number of years ago. I want to say they were based out of Oklahoma or something to that effect, and they were really struggling in terms of their operational performance, especially across shifts. Like one shift would just have a certain amount, another shift would have another amount, and there was always just ebbs and flows, and it was the worst performing plant in the overall country's portfolio. And one day a leader came in and was like, "Hey, how many did you get done today? Like how many units did shift number 2 get done today?" And they put 12. And then shift 1 came in and they're like, "They got 12 done. Let's giddy up." Next thing you
Yeah,
know, they put 13 up, and it became this competition between each one of the shifts. Next thing you know, that organization or that factory became the highest performing plant across the whole of that company's portfolio. And I think it's so apt to what you're getting at. It's like the core of human nature. There is a element of competition, especially if you can find the right players that all believe in that. And then if you start to keep score and start to work as a team to beat whatever score that you were trying to beat, it's like this collective momentum that continues to build.
totally. I read that book earlier this year. It comes from Traction with the
Traction,
EOS.
that's what it was. Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
man.
it's a great example. I mean, I think it's so true. You start keeping track of things, and you can't improve what you can't measure. And so, I
Mhm,
mean, you're totally right. Like for a bunch of guys, especially baseball players who are all
mhm,
stat nerds, care a lot about things like callbacks and customer satisfaction and Google reviews and all that sort of stuff. So it
mhm.
definitely makes for a healthy growth environment.
Absolutely, man. And to your point on like the customer satisfaction side of things, and I know you said you like to keep it fun in the office and have the right type of personalities. That ties to that customer experience so much, right? It's especially in a service-based business.
Yeah, totally. We if you look us up on Instagram, we're probably a little different than your standard, filtration company or whatever. I mean, we like to do some fun stuff, have a lot of
Hmm.
personality. I mean, if you're gonna do something, do it really well, And so
Absolutely.
one of the ways that we wanted to differentiate ourselves is kind of when I was asked to kind of step in as an operator, I was like, man, I don't know anything about water, and I realized
Mm,
like, hey, I pay attention to the news, I'm on social media, and if I don't know much about water, then that probably means a lot of people don't know a lot about water. And so
hmm.
it's fun to get to kind of like try to lead the charge as far as being fun and informational, so it's something that people enjoy consuming, and we're kind of helping to educate. And we've had a lot of luck, a lot of traction with that, of people kind of seeing us as like the friendly neighborhood water filtration guys. So
I love the sentiment, and I would ask. So you guys have found a niche in terms of your positioning and how
mhm.
you like to interact with people and present your brand. You've experienced some headwinds, whether it's a driver crashing into something on the first early days. You also talked to me a little bit about the migration across leadership and what that transition looks like. And so anybody that's buying a business, it would be good for them to hear how you navigated that and what if you were to go back and do it differently, what would you do differently? Maybe you can give a little context to the listeners in terms of what that looked like with the previous owner and what that relationship, how that relationship transitioned.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you're getting into a whole different textbook there, but I would say,
This isn't a therapy session, by the way. Yeah, I'm just.
yeah, right. I mean, obviously, we're super happy with where we're at now. I mean, I think the road to get here wasn't as smooth as we would have hoped. I think that even having run this for a year and a half now, it's like, man, it is like your baby, and I can't imagine having run it for decades. And so I think that any time that you're transitioning a business from one person to another person, there's going to be a lot of like, hey, I care about this. This has been something that I built for a long time and put thousands of hours into. And so I think what I have learned is that incentives are super important. You want to make sure that everyone's aligned for the success of the business,
Mm,
smooth transition. What we went with was more of like a consultant style relationship. It could have worked better. I think it was tough because we were a bunch of hungry young guys that wanted to grow, and it was probably a little bit more on the lifestyle business type of track. And so obviously when you acquire something, you're like, hey, we're gonna pedal to the metal, and we're gonna grow this thing, and we're gonna inject a lot of life and business acumen and just energy. I think when that happened, there was a little bit of a rift in expectations. And so yeah, I would say to anybody that's like looking to acquire a business, obviously make sure you do all your due diligence with the books and the owner and all that sort of stuff. But beyond that, I would say you're going to want to align expectations as much as you can. And it's probably better to pay a little bit more and have a really happy seller than to try to get a really good deal, or whatever. And they're not going to put the energy into transitioning it that you need them to, because our business was one that had a lot of contacts and had a lot of relationships and stuff like that, which can be difficult to transition. And I would say that we've done a really good job of that, in spite of some things, not because of some things, if that makes
mhm.
sense. Yeah.
That makes complete sense. I would ask, as you are navigating that, you made a comment of incentivize the seller or the owner in a unique way where their objectives are aligned with that of the acquirer. Do you have any recommendations on how you would set that up in the future? Is it simply like you only get paid X amount of dollars if you are supporting this transition in this way? Is it earnout? Is it like how would you structure the deal differently?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I would say that it's like, hey, let's work together to create the desired outcome that we both want, and if that happens, then it's going to work out even better than our signed agreement for you. And, obviously we're going to be happy because it was a successful transition. But I think think that if you, I mean, rational people respond to incentives, right? I mean, it's the same thing with, leading a team of guys. Like, you have to know what makes them tick. And some people, it's, hey, this is my baby and I just want the recognition. And some people are, hey, I need to make sure there's dollar signs. Or some people want to be really involved. Some people want to go play golf. I mean, it's going to be different in every scenario. But I think that, in our case, it's with especially relationship heavy business. It's, hey, I want to have a good relationship with you for a long period of time because people are going to continue to call your phone. So
Sure.
whatever you have to do to make sure that that incentive is in place and structured so that, they're going to send you those phone calls and texts when they come in. It's, that's helpful for sure. So you want to, I mean, everybody wants a smooth transition, but I think that aligning incentives is a lot better than, oh, well, I promise, so.
It's gonna
Yeah.
work out, and for those
Right.
people that are listening, I'm giving a thumbs up. Right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got
See,
gotta have.
hopefully I'm not in the middle of my golf round. Yeah. So,
It's funny. I think there's so much truth to that. And for the listeners, what I would call out is I think so many people, especially going down the entrepreneurship path, are optimists, which you almost need to be a limitless optimist is what I would say to step into entrepreneurship because there's all sorts of headwinds, there's all sorts of pain points like you were describing through the activities that you're doing. That's part of the game. The buck stops with you. That said, you also got to defend yourself because anytime money's involved or egos are involved, relationships can change. And someone said something to me a couple of years ago that I thought was so spot on. It's like a business relationship is effectively a marriage. In many ways can be more messy than a marriage if there's a decision to part ways because of some of the collateral damage associated to try to separate a business and shift things away. And so I think it's you just called it out perfectly. It's you have to set expectations early, be open and be direct because trying to placate people or make them feel good through the decision processing is only opening yourself up to risk down the line.
for sure. I think that I would go into it if I were to do it again, seeing it more as like a long-term partnership instead of like, oh, this is just us, acquiring a business from this dude, and we're probably never going to see him again. I think that if both parties have that mindset, then I think that it's just going to be more successful. So I think you're right.
Absolutely. Looking at the operational breakpoints and how systems were running, what were the first early things that you came in and you're like, I need to get this figured out? I know you have some awesome branding. Once again, anybody that's not watching, like, I need to get one of those hats. Let me know how I
Yeah.
Venmo you or send you something to grab one of those. Yeah, yeah. But no, the branding is spectacular. So maybe you talk a little bit about some of the major pain points and what you wanted to address first and
Yeah,
why.
I mean, one of the biggest parts of the acquisition was a white van, and that's a killer for a small business. You're driving around every day. You're driving around a two-sided billboard without anything on it, and so
Oh man.
we knew
Not
from
just that, I'm just going to chime in. Also, there's a connotation to just driving a white van by yourself. I like
right.
that. Yeah, true. True.
Yeah,
You
must
might
have
be.
that
That's the
in there.
double whammy. That's the double
Yeah,
whammy.
exactly. So that would have been the death of our company had we kept it white. But no, we wanted to knock the branding out of the park, and you just knew that was something that we really cared about. And I think that it's branding for a company. I mean, it's kind of like fashion for someone. It's like one of the first things that people are going to notice when they see you walk into a room. And so it's like the very least that you can do is wear an iron shirt and tuck in your shirt and all that sort of stuff. And I think for us, it's like we really wanted to nail the branding. And funny enough, ChatGPT did most of our branding work, and then
Love that.
stuff
Love that.
by a friend of mine. And but yeah, I mean, we've been pretty fortunate for to have like really clean, crisp branding, and we've done a lot to make sure that we present ourselves outwardly as we expect our performance inwardly, which is hey, we want to be the sharpest and highest performing water filtration company in the state.
It's so interesting. I was talking to my brother about this, and he had a really good hypothesis that I'm not going to claim as my own. I'll call out what he shared. He said in a sea of AI content generation, the thing that stands out is taste, and I think the same is true when it comes to just branding, and it comes to like there's a million water filtration companies out there, but if you have taste, that is a unique differentiator that, to your point, opens you up to whole different markets, right? And we'll spend some time talking about how you guys have stepped into really a premium tier market, but I'm assuming that's been one of the strategic levers to facilitate that, right? It's like people like your branding, which catches their eye, it helps you stand out. And also you're also able to charge more premium prices. Once again, I'm inferring, you could tell me if I'm off base, but more premium prices because there's a perception associated to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of truth in that. It's funny that you mentioned the AI stuff because you went from having, like, I really pay attention to, service business branding now, like in a way that I didn't even care about a couple of years ago with like
Sure.
vans, uniforms, and all that stuff. I've seen a shift even in the last 12 months from like really bad vans, like really bad, to you can tell this was generated by AI. And it's like equally bad in the opposite direction of like, yeah, I mean it's visually more aesthetic, but it's somebody just pushed enter on a keyboard
Sure.
and then decided to have it printed. And so it's like we said at the beginning, you can start to hear AI, you can start to see AI in the things that get put out into the world. And I don't think that people want that. They don't want, this like mass produced crap. They want like specialization. They want, you could go to a plumber and have a filtration system installed, or you could call the guys that all they do is filtration work, and we can make sure that this system is perfect for your home, and your family and what you're looking for. And so I think that's kind of like where we hang our hat is like we want to stand out because we are different. And so kind of I appreciate the word class and taste, but yeah, I mean that's exactly what we shoot for is because we just want to reflect outwardly like what we're trying to emulate, internally as a company.
So I was talking with Hunter. So for the listeners, Hunter is a childhood friend of mine that actually introduced Zach and I and said that we should speak and he should be on the pod. He was ranting in one of our group chats. Hunter, if you're listening to this, here's your shout out, unsolicited shout out. But he was ranting in one of our group chats like, I'm just sick of all the AI stuff that's showing up across all these different channels. To your point, I can see it. And even people that I respect are now just pumping out AI content. And it's just the same noise, the same M dashes, the same things that are continuing to show up over and over and over again. I texted him back and I said something to the effect of, I think you've identified the next product category, which I think you're scratching at it too, Zach. It's like for humans, created by humans for humans. Yeah. You know what I mean? Something to that effect. Because to your point, there is a point of just fatigue, right? Like there's only so much robotic content that we can all consume till a certain point where it's like, okay, like can we actually have a conversation here? I don't want to just chat with a machine all day long. So I think it's so great that you guys are leaning in on the taste aspect of things and really differentiating yourself that way.
Yeah, I mean, we want to create fans of our company, not just people that like will buy something from us, but people that are like, man, you got to see these guys. Like they're sharp. They know what they're talking about. They're going to take really good care of you. And I think that when you can generate that level of response from, a client base, instead of having just a bunch of customers, you have a bunch of fans of the business. And, we're super appreciative of our customers and, for allowing us to get to where we are today. But yeah, I mean, it's like anything worth doing is worth overdoing. I think that we all firmly believe that. But, kind of what you're saying makes me think of every once in a while I'll get in the mail what looks like a handwritten note, but like they're actually doing it with machines and they'll put a ball in on it because they know people want to read a handwritten note. And it's like, then you can see the line it's a yellow piece of, legal pad paper, but the lines are off where it's like no human would write that way. It's like somebody just didn't put this in the machine straight
properly
enough or whatever. And it's like, that's even worse.
You're like do it right. Just do it right.
Now you have a machine trying to be a human. It's still going to go in the trash. But yeah, there's just a personal touch goes a long way. Like, hey, we're running late to a sales call, or even if we're on time, hey, I'm going to stop at 7-Eleven. Can I get you something? That's something like a computer can't do. I mean, you can't auto mail that, and so having like a personal touch with everything that we do is really important to us, whether it's a handwritten card after we, install a system or taking funny Instagram videos and stuff like that, just to make people stay. There's plenty of stuff out there that, we could just pump out a bunch of AI articles and junk, and it's like, that's not fun. The fun part is actually like injecting a lot of, peoplehood into it, like the mistakes and all. So
I really want to key into what you're talking about when it comes to taste, personalization, and just branding in general. And I want to key into that specifically for the listeners to understand how you think about creating fans. Because I think what you're getting at is brand equity. And I think that often gets discounted, especially, and we've kind of beating this one up already, but in this current environment, brand equity is being lost because people, like, everyone's drawing from the same water source. And so if everyone's drawing from the same water source, you don't have a unique position because everyone is getting the same outcomes from a centralized location. So things are becoming very homogenous. And so it would be good to just understand what your core tenets are. And maybe you haven't put thought into this, but at least how you think of that and explain it to your team.
Yeah, we have put a lot of thought into that. It's probably because of the book Traction that we read kind of right as we got started. But I mean, we definitely have core values as a company, and it's HHO, or we just call it H2O. It makes it easier for the guys to remember. But it's, we want to be humble, we want to be hospitable, and we want to be outstanding. And so, I think the humble aspect is first to me because it is the most important. You can't operate as a team without a high level of humility. And when you think of bad teammates, it's people that aren't humble, and so customers want you to say, I don't know, if you don't know a question. They don't want you to make it up. That's called being salesy, and so we want to be hospitable. When we're in the home, we want to be doing everything that we can to take care of the client, and if we mess something up, we're going to own it, because going back to the humble part, and we're going to make it right, and we're going to make everyone whole. And I mean, that's from something as small as shoe covers to spraying off a driveway after we did a long dig job and the guys are there for 6 hours and they're exhausted. We're going to make sure your driveway's clean. That's the kind of company that we want to be. And then lastly, outstanding. I mean, there's no excuse for us to not sell and install the most premium products that we can in the most excellent way that we can. And when it comes to service business and you're doing work, I mean, there's crappy ways to do work, and there's really excellent ways to do work. And with what we do, it's like, man, how straight are the lines on the wall? Did you leave handprints on stuff because your hands were dirty because you were working in the dirt? Whenever we're installing something, are we sure that this is going to remove the the issue that the customer wants removed in the home? Or are we just going to put in the same thing at Steve's home that we put in John's home? And so those three values are super important to us. They get preached to everybody on a weekly basis. And the really fun part is like everybody that we hire emulates that. And so there would be a lot of friction within the team if 9 guys were doing that and 1 guy wasn't, and so there's definitely a high standard, and the culture is one that, we've got a bunch of young guys that don't have any plans on going anywhere anytime soon. So it's like, man, let's be really intentional about the culture that we're setting, because I mean, if you've ever been on a bad team, the culture's not fun,
100%.
When you're on a good team, it's easy to have a great culture.
So you are keying into something so interesting, and it's one of the hardest things to do in business, which is create culture. And there's no science to culture, right? Like, there are things that I shouldn't say there's no science. There are actions and things that can be taken. There's also being strategic of who are the players that you're putting in there. How are you cutting out the cancer? How did you navigate that coming into this environment? And maybe it was a singular operator, and there was like that person was the team, and it was just the transition. But it would just be good to understand how you shifted the mindset and how you're getting people to actually reflect the HAO or H2O, excuse me, HHAO strategy.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a one-person company, your culture is called personality.
Was it just the one person?
It was 2 guys. So we inherited one guy as the founder stepped off. But yeah, a one-man company is a personality. It's it's synonymous with culture, really. And so I kind of see that our culture is just a blend, and an average of the guys that we have on the team. And so I think actually one of the most important things with culture is really good hiring. And I think that going back into like the brand and the mission and the values and all that sort of stuff, excellent people are drawn to excellent people. And so if you've got a really lame culture, somebody that's an excellent person, unless there's pressing circumstances, is not going to want to work there. And even in my time in corporate world, you kind of get into this place where it's not very personable. I wouldn't call it. I don't want to be too.
You're good, man.
I call it an excellent, culture. And it's hard in the corporate world. And I've noticed that even with our company, as we start to grow, it's hard to maintain that same personality that it was when it was 4 guys or 5 guys, And so I think the way that we fix that is by hiring really well, but then also like giving all of our guys a lot of kind of like voice within the business, to where they like, feel free to express themselves. And we obviously like to hire athletes. We have a lot of them. And so those are guys that have spent a lot of time in locker rooms, and they know the kinds of things that you say to build up a team and build up a culture, and they know the kind of things that you say to tear down a team and tear down a culture. And so I think people will say, oh, we like athletes because the work ethic and, this or that. I love athletes because they know what it's like to work on a team. And there's a lot of like dead rules when it comes to, hey, when things get hard and you just lost a weekend series to a team you shouldn't have lost to, there's no laughing in the locker room after the game. And it's kind of like, man, when things we've got to like button down and get serious. Everyone is able to snap into that mode, and then when things are going well, and we can celebrate it a little bit, then the guys know when to do that too. And so, I mean, culture, it's hard to put your thumb on, but it really is just kind of like an average of the personalities of the organization. So it's a hard thing to change. It's a hard thing to build, but we're really happy about where we're at for sure.
Well, there's a couple things you touched on that I think were very salient in the topics that you were touching on. So one is it's a symbiotic relationship. Not only can it be the leadership is injecting a certain thought pattern or behavior into the organization, the people also have to feel heard, right? Like it can't just be a dictatorship where information is being pushed down, a totalitarian sort of operating model. And so people have to feel heard and feel like they have influence on the outcome. I also think something interesting that you called out is as you add more team members, the culture continues to morph and change. And I think one of the key instances is like, it just takes one to sour a culture. So understand that cancer fast and root it out, but also realize, and someone said this to me in my early part of my career, and I thought it was such perfect framing when it comes to building a team. It's the culture of the team resets every time a new person is introduced, because like the hierarchy, the status, all these unspoken things that are part of our biology and how human beings just operate are being challenged and being evaluated. And I also like the idea that people that have operated in a team environment know what it's like to grow a successful team. And maybe a better way to say it is they've seen different versions or playbooks and what works and what doesn't work. And so you're able to quickly root out and identify the people that can form well within those type of systems. And then the final piece that I just appreciated is just he brought up the topic that your organization can only operate at the intensity that the collective intensity of the organization. Meaning you as the founder could be frothing at the mouth, like I'm ready to take over the world. But if you have some people that are just focused on like, hey, I'm here to punch my time, get in, get out, and head out, you are always going to be constrained and frustrated by those type, like the variance in expectations. And so I think it's this idea of who, as you're building the culture, can you identify like values? Can you establish values and identify transferable core values that the people have as they're coming into the organization? Because if you do, your probability of building that strong nucleus is much higher.
Yeah. I mean, everybody that you interview is going to say, oh, well, I'm the hardest worker ever, and the reason why that's such it's not even worth asking, candidly. In an interview.
Not at all, man.
You're going to get the same answer from everyone.
Yeah.
But the reason why that's important is because when it's just two of us, it's just me and Brooks, the guy that, jumped in with me immediately, and we're working 80 hours a week and we're staying here until, 10 or 11 o'clock at night. It's like, this is awesome, But when me and Brooks want to stay till 10 or 11 o'clock at night and guys are rolling out at 4:45, it's like, what's going on here, And so, it's very easy for culture to slip and it always falls to the lowest common denominator every time. And the same goes for, my time in baseball. It's like the guy that checks out early and leaves the team lift or shows up late or doesn't stay for. I mean, I've been on teams where everyone stays and hits after practice to get in extra swings, and I've been on teams where everyone leaves early, and everyone just checks in after practice is over. And the former team is always going to outplay the latter team, And so I think the most important thing for us is we've made this place a place where people really actually enjoy coming to and working. We just had like the ice storm, and we were out for a couple days, and everyone was like jazzed to get back in the office and to get to be around each other again. And I think that when you create that kind of environment where it's like, man, I'll commute just to be around the guys that I enjoy, to keep pushing this rock up this hill that we're trying to build this great thing, that's been really special. And so I have a really high bar for the people that we bring on. And you want to make sure that everyone, like you said, every time you bring on somebody, it resets the culture. And so I had a conversation with my team this morning of like, hey, we're bringing on some new guys. It's important that we make sure that they join us, not vice versa. So obviously we wouldn't be bringing them on if we were like worried about that. I think they're great dudes, and I'm really excited for them to get started. But it is tough because you're looking for a very specific avatar of a guy. So
I wish it was easier to find people. It's
yeah,
always
it's tough.
it's always so hard. It's so hard.
Tough.
Why aren't there better people out
Yeah.
there? So, talk to me a little bit about imposter syndrome. So, you came into this role, baseball, corporate finance. Now you're a founder of a company with almost nine guys, explosive growth that you've been seeing. What did that mean for you going through that journey, and how did you navigate the days that you didn't feel like you were maybe equipped to be talking about water because you didn't know anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for this, it's important to go back to my baseball days for sure. I was a catcher my whole life. I got drafted as a pitcher. I found out I could throw 97 like a month before the draft.
Pretty
So,
fast.
fun fact. Got into pro ball, and my first ever outing, I'm running out of the bullpen and I like black out. And I end up having an incredible outing, but I come out of that and, my manager shakes my hand. He's like, hey, you can, throw your catcher's glove in the trash. Like, you're a pitcher now. And for like the next 12 to 18 months, I was like, I hope nobody finds out that I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, I'm throwing this ball as hard as I can. But I think comparing what I'm doing now to that, it's like, dude, nobody knows what they're doing when they start out.
No
And
one
just from
knows. No one knows.
there's a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time that don't know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that in those moments, which, are getting fewer and, more far between now, just reminding myself of like, man, all that really matters is like the intentionality and the effort. And so, all I know is that I want to build an awesome company and have, I have great relationships with the people that work for me. And if I'm putting in the effort and bringing that kind of energy to work, then it'll probably work out. Maybe it won't, but at least I won't have any regrets about it. And so there's definitely been moments where it's like, man, the whole team's looking to you and it's like, I need to say something. And I really enjoy that because I feel like that's something, leadership has been something that, since I was a kid that I really enjoy. I think for any entrepreneur that wants to build a business, leadership is so important. You have to know how to speak to the heart of a person and, to inspire and motivate them. I mean, there's just some days that when it's 110 degrees in Texas and you got to get in a crawl space to a house, there's no amount of money that's going to fix that. But when, I can actually sit them down, before or after they get back and be like, dude, what you just did for our business was like move the needle in such a big way that's going to help us like build, this mountain one day. Then it's like, dude, I'm running into that crawl space, And so I would just say that like, I think everyone has imposter syndrome, and if you don't have it, then there's probably some level of like you're faking it, or I mean, I guess maybe you've been doing it long enough, but it's something that it always reminds me of my time in baseball, because it was like, dude, I didn't know what I was doing. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. You're playing well. It doesn't matter if you know what you're doing or not. It's like what matters is the intention and the outcome. So
One of the things you called out on imposter syndrome is it's like, how much time have you been on the field? So after that 18-month period, imposter syndrome starts to not be as intense because you have gotten enough reps in to know that your identity, maybe a better way to say is your identity has shifted into the new role that you were growing into, and you've accepted that as who you are now versus who you're trying to become. And so I think the takeaway for anybody listening is imposter syndrome will show up if you're pushing the boundaries of your personal identity beyond what you know how to do today. So like if you don't have it, you're probably not pushing hard enough. If you're comfortable, that's fine, and you don't want to push, that's fine. But also realize like it's not a bad thing to have imposter syndrome, but also your contra or your control for that to try to rid yourself of it more quickly is reps. And how did you get the reps in? You worked 80 hours a week for whatever duration of time till you're like, man, I know water like the back of my hand better than some other people in this entire space, and can speak to branding and strategy and how to build a business. And I think that's what's contributed to your accelerated growth since you kicked this thing off over the last year is you just put the time in and you kept swinging at the batting cages after practice was done because you knew that what was going to get you that much closer to the end state that you were looking to get to.
totally. I mean, you're only going to see something for the first time once, and after that, then, if you're smart, you learned from it. And so I actually think that one of the biggest maybe barricades for people feeling imposter syndrome or things that can keep you in that kind of mental state longer is ego. It's you have the humility to be like, man, I don't know what to do right now, and you
Hmm.
ask the question, well, guess what? Next time that comes up, you're gonna know what to do, you know?
Hmm.
And so I think that for us, like such a big key has been like, man, we are not offended when we don't know the answer to something. We don't get flustered. We just go, okay, well, we know somebody that knows the answer to that, we know how to get the answer to that question. We get the answer to the question as fast as we can, and it doesn't happen very often anymore. Like I said, those moments are fewer and far between nowadays. But I'm sure that something's going to happen probably in the next 2 weeks. It's like, man, I've never had to deal with this before,
Hmm.
and then you think through it, or you seek out counsel, or you go to a mentor and he goes, oh well, this is how I'd handle that, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to try that. And so yeah, I think back to the kind of the core values of if you're marked by humility, then there's you're not faking it. You're honest when you don't know something,
Hmm.
So
And going back to the human element of things, people just appreciate honesty. Like people appreciate honesty and transparency, especially in a business environment when a transaction is taking place, and a lot of trust. I mean, we didn't really spend much time talking about this, but water is what, 60% of our body, 70% of our body,
yeah,
and
it's
so
a
I'm,
lot.
I'm pulling the numbers out of the sky, but it's some
No,
big
yeah,
percentage.
it's
Some
plenty
listeners gonna
higher.
correct me in the comments.
Yeah,
but but that percentage, like there has to be a lot of trust in the service that you're providing because it makes up so much of people's daily intake and what they're putting their energy and thought into it. So I think it just comes back to what we've spent a lot of time talking about is how do you separate yourself in the market. It's just being human, making sure that you're trustworthy, making sure that you're addressing some of the opportunities that exist for the clients that you're working with.
yeah, 100%. I mean, that's one of the tough things is like water's clear, so you can't really tell if, what we sold you is working or not. I mean, you can
Hmm.
taste it through something like an RO, but yeah, I mean, there is a lot of trust involved with something like this. And if you come in and you actually have every single answer and you just talk for an hour straight, 1,000 words a minute, then it's like, I don't know that I trust you. You're just selling me something,
Hmm.
So it's like all of our sales guys, like we go in and we ask a lot of questions. And there are
Hmm.
some times where we'll be like, hey, we actually can't fix that problem. Or,
Hmm.
you actually have a unique situation because of this, or, whatever it may be. And we're really honest about what our systems can take out and what they can't take out. Not everybody is. But I sleep well at night knowing if somebody sends our water to the lab that they know exactly what's going to come back. And
Hmm.
so there's a lot of people that have called us because that's happened. And, the company that sold them something, might have been exaggerating some of the benefits. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
yeah.
transparency is key and
Mhm.
making sure that you're open. You spent a lot of time building your brand, building the perception in the marketplace. From your vantage point, was it a strategic move to move into higher net worth individuals as part of your rebranding? Did you fall into it and you're like, this is a much better place to shift our business? How did that happen, and how have you gotten now into the niche that you're in today?
Yeah, I would say it's almost the opposite. I think that when we took over the business, it was more of that, and it was a lot of custom builders and
Mm.
clients like you're talking about. And I mean that's natural to happen because people know people, and they make introductions, and it was very word of mouth driven. But actually, what we're seeing is the more marketing that we do and stuff like that, like we're starting to attract families all over the board, which is great.
Mm.
And we want to, obviously we have a passion to take care of people's water, and we can talk water all day long with
Mhm.
whoever it is. We'll show up to your house and chat water with you as much as you want. But yeah, I think that was something that we kind of inherited, where it was like this pipeline of like builders, and so we definitely continued that. And we're trying to expand, geography wise. Like we're launching over in Fort Worth here next week, which is exciting. But yeah, I think it's kind of a mixture of both. That's what we inherited, but we're also starting to see more of the other side come in too, which is great.
That's spectacular. I'm so excited to see where you guys continue to take this as you reflect on your years of experience, everything that you know today. If you were to go back to your younger self, maybe in like 10 years from now, I'm gonna pick an arbitrary number. What advice would you give to that younger version of yourself based off of all of your learnings?
Man, that's a good question. Everything seems like a mountain in the moment, and looking
Hmm.
back, it's like, man, that really was not that big of a deal. And
Hmm.
so, there was times in baseball where I'd have an injury and I'm like, this is the end of my career.
Hmm.
times even in the corporate world where it was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, or this project or this deadline or whatever, and then it's like now it's completely different problems. But I think the longer that I do this, the more unaffected I am by events happening, because you start to, well, I also thought this was a big deal, and then I thought this other thing was an even bigger deal before that, and so just understanding that, like, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, that's biblical. So it's like, dude, all the problems that I'm struggling with, other people have struggled with at some point.
Sure.
I'm not special. I'm not unique. I think that, if I just try to, be faithful to do the right thing and treat people the right way, then it does sort itself out. So that's what I would say.
Do you think that view has changed your view today on how you operate since acquiring this business and navigating all the pain points that you experienced through that?
Yeah, I think that the longer that I'm, in the position that I am, the more that I actually apply that learning, rather than, oh my gosh, this is a huge deal. It's not like me calling my business partners and mentors like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? It's more of like, oh, by the way, this happened last week,
Yeah, yeah, I gotcha. I gotcha.
which is, I'm sure that that's appreciated. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. I think you grow in leadership. Leadership it's a skill, and so it's something that you have to practice and that you get better at. And handling issues that come up is a skill, and you can be completely rocked by it, or that you can rest on the faith that you have of like, man, I know that this is all going to work out, and then it doesn't seem as big of a deal anymore. So just kind of keeping problems in perspective.
I appreciate that so much. If you're a fan of Stoicism, they often talk about this notion of memento mori, which translates to rest on your deathbed. And the whole idea is when you take a step back and you're laying on your deathbed and you're reflecting about all of your life, you're probably not going to be freaking out about the I'll use an example you called out earlier, the junior technician that came in and crashed the van at some point. Like, in the moment it feels like, what the hell is happening right now? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
it's not to say that your human reaction or behavior isn't warranted or won't come up, but I think it's more about what's your speed of recovery on the back end of it, to be like, roll with the punches, move on to the next thing. Like, I'm not going to give this power. And so I really appreciate that call out, because I think everyone, including myself, can take that as advice to apply within our own life.
Yeah. Yeah, I like stoicism. I think that, the way kind of, and I'm a Christian, so the way that I would look at it is not like, hey, I want to detach emotionally from what's going on, but it's more so of like watching a really good movie knowing how it ends. It's like you can experience all the depths of the doom and gloom and all the enjoyment because you know how the movie ends, and so I think that, having a faith and believing what I believe, it's like, I want to celebrate and experience the highs for sure. And it's okay to like feel the lows. It's like, man, we had a couple of technicians that it's like one of them had to step away for a pretty unfortunate reason. And yeah, it breaks your heart and it makes you really sad. And it also,
Sure.
has impacts on the business, and it's okay to feel that. What's not okay is for you to let that rock you. And if you know how it ends, then it's like, man, there's no need for that. And so I think stoicism has a lot of that to it. But I think that, man, if you're running a business and you just manage to get through the highs and lows, there are way easier careers out there for you to do it. But
Sure.
if you actually find a way to enjoy the highs and lows as like some epic story that's unfolding before you,
I love
it's
that.
like, that's so much more enjoyable. So that's I would say that's kind of like the motto of the team, and we kind of like allow ourselves to, man, you get kicked in the stomach, it's like, oh, that really hurt, but like, you know what, we're gonna laugh about this tomorrow, and so it's similar but different in like a subtle way of like, hey, we don't want to be completely removed from this emotionally. We just want to like keep the main thing in the focus, which is like, man, this is going to work out. So, and that could mean a ton of different things. We could, hopefully not go out of business tomorrow, but hopefully not.
You're going to be fine, man. You're going to be fine. I would just say this. I think you hit the nail on the head. I
Thanks,
think it's
man.
not about disattaching yourself. I think it's, to your point, you have to, life is meant to be lived. And so live it. And also understand that the full spectrum of emotions are part of the deal. So accept them for what they are. Know that another day always comes, and there's going to be a whole mixture of emotions that come along with them. But don't stop living.
Totally.
I appreciate the time today, Zach. Everything that you're doing at Water Doctor is awesome. the journey that you've had over the last year has been spectacular. And I know that very, very good things that you've already found, but more good things are on the horizon for you and the rest of the business. Before we break, is there any place where people can find you if they live in the Dallas area, if they want to find out more about your company, your personal brand, anything like that?
Yeah, Dallas Water Doctor on Instagram is where you can kind of check us out. I feel like you can watch that or look at that and get kind of a good feel for the cast of characters that I deal with every day. They're the best dudes. But yeah, other than that, I think it's like Zach Plunk on _Plunk on Instagram, probably the same on Twitter. So I used to be way more into Twitter before they called it X. And
you're like, and for that reason, I'm out.
Social media to keep
Yeah,
up with.
true.
I pop on there every once in a while.
It's all AI slop anyways. Don't worry. You don't need to get on there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Blake.
That's it for this episode of The Scaling Paradox. If this helped cut through the chaos, please send it to another founder or operator that's stuck in it too. If you haven't subscribed yet, let's fix that. New episodes of The Scaling Paradox drop every other Thursday. There's no filler in this podcast, just the real work of scaling past yourself.